word.
Is it time? It's
He
time.
said recording in progress.
It's like they start the meeting, start the recording so that we have to start the meeting.
It's kind of like playing the music at the Oscars, no?
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals. I call this meeting of August 19th, 2024 to order. Roll call: Halverson here, Dorff
Here.
Schuchart here, Bogenschutz,
Nope.
Koch,
Cook here.
Cook, sorry,
That's okay.
Andrews.
Nope.
First item up is the approval for today's meeting. Is there a motion on the agenda?
I move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes from July 15th.
So moved.
I second.
We have a motion and a second for approving the minutes of the July 15th meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to regular business, and I have some things to read. The Zoning and Planning Board of Appeals hears and acts on appeals for variances from city zoning code requirements. The members of this board are appointed, and the board acts as a quasi-judicial body during these appeals, which means that appeals are presented somewhat like a case is presented in court, and the board acts as the judge and determines whether to grant the appeal by a majority vote. For each item, we'll hear from the applicant, that's you folks in the audience, and staff, as well as any additional witnesses where appropriate. If you are the appellant for an item on tonight's agenda, please come and take a seat at the table when your item is called. And so for Appeal 25-24, consideration with possible action on a variance request from Keith, I'll say Boucher, is that the correct pronunciation? Applicant and property owner requesting to exceed the maximum number of driveways for a single-family home at 3493 Nicolay Drive. So folks, on the board here, it is the goal of the Board of Appeals to provide and conduct a hearing that is fair in form, appearance, and substance. To ensure that this hearing satisfies these goals, would each member of the Board of Appeals please confirm the following for this appeal by stating, "I confirm." I do not have a conflict of interest in this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
And I confirm. I have not received any communication from any person or party about this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm. Great. Would the petitioner please join us at the table? And we will start the presentation on this by hearing from staff. And so I will also ask for an oath from everybody speaking here. So John, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
All right, take it away.
So what we're looking at here is an application for a property on Nicolay Drive. What's in condition is Chapter 44-1746, Sub 1, number of driveways. Single-family uses are permitted one driveway per lot unless otherwise regulated in this chapter and subject to the design regulations specified herein. The applicant is requesting two driveways. The times where you can have two driveways just by right is if you happen to have a circular driveway, or if you happen to have an alley, which an alley in this case, it's on the bay, wouldn't really occur here. So, property, long, narrow lots, that is along the bay, and so what you're seeing here is the main residence is back out towards the bay itself, and there are two garages. I don't know if they're necessarily legal non-conforming or legal because there was a variance. There could have been one back in the 70s, but they've been here since the 70s, the two garages. So they are legal in their own right. The issue that comes into play is what you're seeing here is a photo from 2023. And there is a driveway that is paved that leads to the larger garages near the house. And there's a garages alongside the street itself. And that area happens to have some gravel. Now, if you go back into aerials over the course of time, you're going to see gravel in some years, and then in some years you don't. There was a permit that was pulled for this garage back in the early teens to do work in the garage. And as I noted, the garage is legal. So even though it's a second garage, it's a legal garage there. And in that time period, and having conversations with the applicant over time, there was gravel that was placed up there. That really shouldn't have happened. You can't place gravel on driveways. But it was never caught, because if you go down to Clay Drive, you will see a number of driveways that happen to have gravel down that way. There was no complaint on that. Where this comes into play is you're gonna see the driveway that leads back towards the main residence on the left here, this gravel driveway, and then there's a gravel driveway that's right here. The folks who own this property happen to have pull a driveway permit earlier this year to do their driveway, and in that same process, they asked, that's why you're seeing some driveway, why there's some squiggly lines up this way. There was a permit to be pulled to do the driveway that's being proposed right now. And with that in mind, this went through a typical site plan review, and that's where the red flag came up going, this isn't supposed to meet the code. Code says you can have one driveway per lot. So they're asking for a second one leading to that garage stall. So what you're seeing here as far as the site plan goes, everything that's within the property itself, if we're looking just through the lens of a vacuum to where this was the only garage on site, works for typical bulk requirements for a driveway, if it was just the one garage. There's some notes here beyond that, beyond the property line, where it gets over towards Nicolay Drive. Keep in mind it's a county highway, and it's a rural county highway. The standards for aprons out on that stretch of road just are different compared to everywhere else in the city, because the highway department has control over that. So we're not looking at the lens here of what does it mean for an apron, and we've had those questions in the past. Leave that alone on this one. It does not matter. However, highway department and DPW decide it needs to go for any sort of paving in the future, that's their call. The code doesn't apply to this here. What's at question here is the applicant's asking for a second driveway. And in the lens of that second driveway, they meet the code as far as typical bulk requirements, but they're asking for the second one. And that's going above and beyond what the code allows for.
Questions for staff? Go ahead.
So that garage has been there for how long, did you say?
It looks like the garage in the way its current form is sometime before 1978. It looks like there could have been a garage that was there back in the 60s or even earlier than that, but those photos get awfully grainy, and it's hard to tell scale, so it may have been rebuilt sometime in the 70s.
And there's always been access to that garage.
Right, there's been access. If you go back through just the street view from 2008 and beyond, and sometimes you're going to see where it was before about the 2014 photo, it was simply grass. It's grass there. From 2014 on, there's been some sort of loose gravel happening that way. To just put all the cars on deck, from 2014 on, you can't just add gravel to a driveway and call it a day. That if there was a complaint and it was noticed, would have at that point triggered a potential variance, because you can't have gravel there. Because we know that gravel was not a legal grandfathered situation. It wasn't. So imagine if there was gravel back in 1978 for this driveway this whole time. Then that gravel would have been legal and it was maintained. That's fine. You could have kept that gravel this entire time. The gravel was added sometime around 2013, 2014, and that shouldn't have been there, but it was never caught. What triggered this was because, going back to this site plan, the neighbor to the north was putting in a paved driveway as well, and the contractors were looking to then also put in the driveway here, and that's now a second driveway entrance onto a property.
So the access would be only legally granted if it was all grass, and then you drive on the grass.
And that you're not allowed to do either, because you can't drive over grass.
So then he has no access to his garage unless he has a driveway. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
For cars.
For cars. You can access it still as a person to get inside there, but you can't access it for vehicles now.
Is it pavable from the paved driveway to that garage entrance? Just spur off of the driveway, or is there a problem with the power lines that are there?
Did not look into that, but keep in mind that would be, as far as the solution goes, you'd be in the front yard setback with that. So we didn't look at it as a solution without avoiding a variance on this problem.
Is that a one-car or two-car garage?
Two-car.
Two-car? That's really distorted on the package picture.
Yeah, it is really distorted. It's like,
It's a shed, I think.
I was swore it was a
Yeah.
one car.
Yeah.
That's fine, that's fine. It doesn't really matter, honestly.
It's the smaller of the two garages on the site, yes.
I think it
We'll-
would.
Sir, we'll get to you in a minute.
you were talking. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
And I will note, so the petitioners here, there does appear at least to be one other person online who would like to comment on this as well.
Okay.
All right, if there's no further questions, we'll go to the petitioner here. Sir, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I-
Great. Tell us about your request and why you want this
Well-
variance.
I bought the place 33 years ago, excuse me, and at that time, both driveways were gravel. The long driveway was a gravel driveway. And the one in front of the garage that we're talking about, there was gravel there, but it was all overgrown with weeds that hadn't been maintained in years, because the garage was not being really used that much. So we blacktopped the main driveway. And then about 15 years ago, we raised the garage, rather than losing the garage, we raised it, straightened out the walls, poured a new concrete floor, and it was my wife's workshop. And we tore that down and we had electricity put in. But there was a driveway there to begin with originally, and then at that time, we didn't realize we were doing something wrong, but we put gravel over the top of the old gravel, which, and now, I guess our main thing is aesthetically, we'd like to do it, we were gonna do it with the contractor who did it, who just did the project there, they were just gonna include it and just get it done. But now that we started, but I guess the main thing, and I'm sorry, the second driveway that we got, because this one actually was the original driveway, I think, because when the home was built in '29, they didn't have snow blowers, and they had other cars up on the highway, so that they could get to work in the morning. And then someone allowed them to have a second driveway. I don't know if they had an ordinance back then, but it was a circular driveway with the neighbor. The neighbor to the south, they each, could come and go out of the driveway, which had been vacated when they built the new garage down by the property. So right now, I guess the big thing, and the way you're looking at it, to keep gravel off County Road would be beneficial for pedestrians and cyclists, because it can get slippery. And your little, not moped guys, but your crotch rocket guys that are going down the road with one wheel, it's about our location where they like to get up on one wheel. So, but that's the program, I guess. So in your line of thinking, I guess, the safety aspect, to get the gravel off the road.
Right, thank you. Questions for our petitioner?
Yeah, I do. What do you keep in that garage?
Right now is my boat, and my wife's, she's a welder, but she's losing her sight, so she's not very active in it anymore.
So you don't keep cars in it?
Pardon me?
You don't keep automobiles?
No,
No.
but I don't know.
Okay.
Other questions? All right, well, we'll discuss this and,
We've got the
Should
person.
we-
oh, that's right, we've got another person wanting to speak. Person on the phone wanting to speak, would you please give us your name and address for our record?
She's in there. There you go.
Okay, so you're unmuted right now. Could you say your name and address?
Sheila Cradler, 3481 Nicolay Drive. We're 2 houses to the south
And
of this applicant. And we have absolutely no problem with it going through. In fact, we think it will aesthetically add to the area, and it probably will make it more safe as well.
Thanks, Sheila, and just so I can have you in the record as well, can you swear or affirm that that testimony is the truth, and any else that you're about to give us will be the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Sheila? All right, now we will deliberate. I do have one other question for staff. Looking at the property immediately south, it looks like there's 2 drives there. What am I seeing there?
I don't know if there are 2 drives there. I gotta say, for this sake, it's the first time I'm looking at that because it's independent, it's a different parcel.
I can tell you, it's exactly the same, but there's a concrete pad in front of the upper garage. So I'd be matching it.
Well, folks, you've got all the knowledge that we might need to make a decision here. What are your thoughts? I'm struck at what appears to be a degree of silliness if we're allowing the garage, but no driveway associated with the garage.
Yeah.
Because I would think for one, I perhaps am right on this, preservation of intent. It would not be consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the regulations for this district to have a driveway going to this garage, which has had a driveway for years and years and years and years. And so I don't think it would be inconsistent with the regulations for the district, for that particular area of the district.
And I think we've got an exceptional parcel here of a lot that's had these 2 drives for a long time that we don't even have records of when, they first appeared.
Well, in 3, preservation of property rights, we just mentioned that next door, there's a very similar situation. And so the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of the same substantial property rights which are possessed by other properties in the same district and vicinity. I think we got that one, right?
And I would, Stephen?
No, I mean, yeah, I agree.
And I would say too that in terms of that, to allow the garage kind of says you're going to allow the driveway. You ought to follow that the driveway's allowed. So I think that would be an argument I would also make under number 3.
I would just supplement that a bit further. There was some varying testimony today about whether that driveway existed before the improvements in the early teens. The old pictures don't appear to be terribly clear about that. And the testimony from Mr. Boucher is that it did pre-exist those improvements, and that, so it's not as though that, from what it appears, that this is a brand new driveway that was snuck in as part of that improvement.
In absence of detriment, in fact, it will improve the safety of the area.
As per the petitioner's argument and a neighbor concurring, I
Yeah,
think.
so I think we can say yes to number 4.
And in terms of a hardship, it's not a self-imposed hardship. These have been here, this garage was there when you purchased the property.
Well, I mean, I can't imagine who originally put up the garage didn't put a driveway in front of it.
Right.
I mean, just because it got overgrown before 2014.
Right.
Right.
This is just a case of, a lot of stuff was done without code back in the day, yeah.
So I'm going to make a motion to approve the variance.
I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance as requested. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, sir. You got your
Thank you.
variance.
Thank you very much. What do I do now?
Work with John on
Yeah.
getting
So
that.
you'll want me to do the site plan? need to work with Department of Public Works in Brown County about that apron we discussed in the past, to make sure that they're content with what the dimensions want to be done that way. But give me a call tomorrow, we can discuss.
Sounds good. Thank you, John.
Our next appeal, 26-24, consideration with possible action on a request from Dave Mertens, applicant, Mertens LLC property owner, requesting to exceed rear and corner front yard setback standards for a single-family home in an R1 low-density residential district at 1600 South Norwood Avenue. And as I noted earlier, on our goal to conduct and provide a hearing that is fair in form, appearance, and substance, please confirm the following statements for this appeal by stating, I confirm, I do not have a conflict of interest in this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm. I have not received any communication from any person or party about this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
And I confirm. Great. Would the petitioner please join us at the table? And we will begin again by hearing from staff. John, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
So what we're looking at here is three different parts of the lot dimension and building code requirements for the site. It's a corner lot, and staff did work with the petitioner as far as what could possibly be done here. So what we're looking at here is one, the rear yard, which is the south side of the property. The minimum setback is 25 feet. They are requesting 3 feet. A corner front side yard, that is sub F, that is the east side of the property. The side facade of a corner building adjoining a public street shall maintain the front setback of the adjacent property fronting upon the same public street. In this case, it's Norwood. If no structure exists on the adjacent property, then it's 1/2 of the required setback, but there is one there. They're requesting 25 feet. The neighboring property is 30 feet setback from the front yard setback. And then finally, front yard, subsection C, north side, where at least 50% of the front yard, or the front footage of any block is built up with principal structures, the front setback for new structures shall be built to an equal average of the existing structures. The existing structure to the west constitutes 50% of the overall block, because it's just these two parcels. And that setback is 20 feet. They're requesting 15 feet for the principal structure. So this is the parcel itself. We're looking from a photo back in 2023. That building that was there has since been raised. That building that you see there has a footprint where it's about 3 feet or so off of the south line. It is approaching with this about 25 feet or so from the east line, and about 15 feet or so from the north line, which is what they're asking for this variance. Now, mind you, the building that they're looking to place here is wider. It's 45 feet wide. The structure itself that was here last year was about 24 by 24. When speaking with the applicant as far as the uses on an R1 low-density residential lot, your primary use that people have on there are single-family homes. In theory, you could do something that's less intensive, like a public park, but the typical use is a single-family home. And so right now, the site itself is just a vacant parcel, and they're looking to put a single-family home on the lot, replacing what was there. But the home that was there was a legal non-conforming home. So when looking at setbacks, we, as far as staff, made note that because of how this overall structure is, where you have the overall parcel being 40 feet in width on a corner lot, if you are looking to put up a single-family home, you have to come through to this board and ask for a variance. There is no way around that. The minimum size of a home on the two sides, length and width, is 22 feet per code. And so the petitioner is asking for a 22-foot wide home. If the petitioner met all the aspects of the code and then happened to arrange the building to where it was facing Norwood, and then the south side became the corner side yard, and only need to have a 6-foot side yard, and if you happen to have the matching backward this way to where you would hit the 20 feet, 20 plus 6 equals 26, 40 minus 26 is 14 feet. You could ask for a house that's 14 feet in width and meet all the setbacks. Instead, they chose to go the route of having a 22-foot wide home, and then having it be 45 feet in length. Now, this is a corner lot, so we have to establish a front yard and a corner front with this. The house is addressed to Norwood, and you're gonna see here on this old photo, because we have a door and a door, the way the house was set up before, we would take either side as being the front or the corner side on this one. With what petitioner is asking for, where there's a front clearly going on to the Waverly, which is the north side, the street on the north side, and there's not a door over on this side. For all intent and purpose, the front is facing along Waverly. So with that in mind, going back to our three questions, that's how staff came to the conclusion as far as what to call as a rear yard, a corner front side yard, and a front yard, because in this case, it's pretty obvious that the intent is to have it where you face out towards Waverly, not having a dual option of where your house is facing out towards. And so with that in mind, that's where the setbacks have been set at. So just to keep in mind, as far as what a typical a side yard, i.e. the south side, if the house was facing towards Norwood, for a single-story home, that'd be 6 feet is your typical side yard setback. So if the house was facing towards Norwood instead, at that point, we would switch our how we judge a corner side yard and a front yard. You take the average and along Norwood, which would be pretty similar to what's being requested here, or the average would be around 30 feet or so in that regard too. And then back down this way, it still remains that you're about 20 feet off of the front yard setback for the people down along Waverly. So this is getting a bit convoluted as far as what we want to judge as a setback, but I just want to give some context that in either case, you're still dealing with the same setbacks, with the exception of a side yard setback, because where you're placing a rear yard and a side yard is different based off of how you place the front door on this property. The rest, as far as accessory building, seems like we'll meet the code just fine for this, as well as impervious surface on this size lot. So it's in reality, it's those three things that come into play. So it is three separate questions that are being asked upon to see if a house can fit on this property.
John, does the layout of this site, as we're seeing it in our packet, reflect, feedback from staff as to the optimal, least non-conforming layout of the property?
Right, I mean, where this building gets larger, if you will, is because of how it goes into the middle of the yard. That's the, what's at play here as far as, and that's not really, because it meets the requirements for impervious surface, and it's not going overboard in that way. For all intents and purposes, fine. I mean, when we look at corner lots, we try to work with people who are petitioners to try to go either way they want to choose as far as which corner to go off of. However, it's addressed. It's your call how you want to put that. As far as where this building can be placed, in theory, you could, as far as where Norwood is at, you could move it back a bit to get to that 30 feet. If you moved it further back this way to the west, I don't see with a 22-foot wide building that you can do anything different with this side at all. And I'll note that the building, as far as where this is placed in relationship to the old building, is in the same. If you take the old building, this building is a bit longer, but if you took that southeast corner, it's the same spot as it was before. In fact, it's a bit narrower because, as noted before, the old building appears to be about 24 feet by 24 feet, whereas this one's 22 feet.
Questions for staff?
What is the difference in width of this lot versus the one behind it? Looks like this one is a narrower lot. Maybe one of the narrower.
Compared to this one here?
Yeah, looks like it's one of the narrower, smaller lots on the block.
Yeah, that's a good question. I believe that's at 52.5 feet is what that is, because that's what the overall block is back down that way, whereas this one is at 40.
Yeah, it's tight. Other questions for staff? All right, let's turn to our petitioner. Sir, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth? Yes. Great. Tell us a little bit more about this and why you need this variance.
I need the variance in order to accommodate, I think, a building or a residence of any sort on it. Without getting variance, I don't think it's buildable.
It's 14 feet wide, I think we were talking about, with the
Yeah.
narrowest dimension there.
Yeah.
It's not very common.
It's not, very limited possibilities. I think you've got some tiny home options or the container home options, and I don't think that really fits into the neighborhood.
Very good. Questions for the petitioner?
What happened to the house that was on it?
It was raised, I think the previous floor was from July of '23.
You raised it?
I didn't know,
You didn't?
no. that
You bought
was-
you bought the resulting property?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions? All right, well, thank you, we'll deliberate on this.
Okay.
No,
Yes, sir.
I think there might be some people.
Oh, do we have other people wishing to
Yes,
speak?
we do have-
Sorry, yes, please join us at the table here. Give us your name and address.
My name is Greg McCarty. This is Amber Durfee. She is a property owner at 1604 South Road.
Great. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Okay.
We just kind of wanted to get a little bit more information by coming here. We just had a few concerns when we got the letter in the mail about what the property, or what the plans for the property were, given that it is such a narrow lot. Amber here had bought that house last August as your first home, doing a lot of improvements on that property. One of those improvements, hopefully next year, will be a new garage, which is right on that property line. So we were concerned whether the 1600 property getting this variance, if that will negatively affect us if we want to put up a new garage eventually. Being that the buildings are going to be so close together, probably within 5 or 6 feet of each other.
John, what's the side yard setback on a garage?
Side yard setback for an accessory building is, for a narrow lot, is 2.5 feet. I want to keep in mind, as far as building separations, for zoning code, it's 3 feet. For building code, which is not the purview here, but it's just part of our building code, you need to have 10 feet separation unless you happen to have a firewall separation between buildings, and then you can get it lower.
So,
Could you explain to them what that means?
Yeah, so if somebody, so when it comes to building right now, if this were to be approved, and if they happen to be building a building within 10 feet of an already existing building, they will need to do measures to ensure fireproofing if they want to put that building within 10 feet of an existing building. Either what they have as far as what they're proposing with your buildings, or to an accessory building as well, they put the garage within 10 feet. They had to have some sort of measures to have fireproofing.
Can I ask for clarification? So because there's something there right now, a garage there, then this structure, if it's approved, would have to have that fire wall?
You would have to meet the standards for building code.
And then theirs would have to have a firewall when they do
Only
it?
one would do.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily if it's chicken and egg, who takes, if you have to at that point, if you build new and you're within 10 feet, if somebody else already had building code approved fire separation, I'm not sure how that necessarily
Okay,
works.
but in any case, it's going to be within 10 feet if we approve it, so they're going to have that firewall.
If they were to place their building, which you're allowed to, within 2.5 feet,
2.5, I thought you said 10 feet. Okay.
for the side yard setback, it's 2.5
2
feet.
feet, okay.
For buildings, for zoning code, for chapter 44,
Okay.
it's a 3-foot separation between buildings. But there's international building code, which that comes into play where you're getting into more engineering specifics of that sort, to where I cannot give you specific on the standards as far as what you have to be where you can be closer than 10 feet as far as the measures taken, but you have to have a firewall separation or some sort of fire suppression separation if you happen to build something that is within 10 feet of an existing building, either on your property or the neighboring property.
And the applicant's building right now would be within that 10 feet or no?
Presumably, yes, yeah, it would be.
So the short answer is that, no, I don't necessarily see, and obviously, you got to talk to the staff when you're ready to build and work out those details, but there doesn't seem to be anything that says you can. You just have to be mindful of some of the constraints that may be on it, as multiple properties here have to deal with because they're small lots.
Correct. Is there anything regarding fencing, privacy fence?
I think that's getting a little bit beyond the purview
Okay.
of what we're really
Okay.
able to do here as this board tonight.
Yeah.
No disrespect, man.
Yep, no, that's fine. That was kind of our main concerns. Obviously, we are just personally opposed to having a building so close. I know that's just the way it goes. We didn't buy the lot, so it's not our lot. But that was all the questions I had. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, discussion?
I guess just before we get into the discussion, the question that I have is, do we need to meet all 5 of the elements for each of these separate setback issues? Just
You do, now they could be the matching for each
Right.
one of them, or part of them, but you do have to move through for all 3.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and I think the overall story of a very small, narrow lot is kind of going to drive the same arguments on all 3 cases here.
That's what I'm thinking.
the reason I asked that question is it sounds like and maybe I heard wrong, is I think the only one I'm having a hard time getting there is the corner front side yard might be something that can be complied with if you could move that house. There's room to comply on that lot for that.
Right, or if the building's smaller, that's the other question I have. If the other building was 550 square, and I understand that one wasn't placed in the right spot, this is 900 and some. If this was a 750 square foot building, does it fit? I know it's tiny, but it's a tiny lot. That's what you get. Because when I look at staff's report here, the things I'm seeing here is, so 20 feet to 15 feet on the front yard north side. That doesn't seem egregious to me. And then 25 feet for the corner front side. That doesn't seem egregious to me either. It's a 5-foot variance. It's the number 1, the rear yard south side min setback of 25 feet, and it's down to 3. That seems a big variance.
Yeah, and when I'm looking at that, and especially taking into consideration the input we just had from the neighbors, if we made this a 5-yard setback on that instead of 3 foot and allow the 15 to go down to 13, then you've created a little bit more separation to the adjacent property and maybe a little less, constraints on future construction next door without necessarily, tinkering too much with the site plan and the conversations that have gone on to this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I could get behind that.
So you're saying for one, it would be 5 feet?
Yeah, we make that rear yard setback 5 feet and then the front yard setback's 13 feet.
Oh, I see.
Just shift.
Sure.
Just shifting it over 2
Shifting it.
feet.
Yeah.
And this is where the idea of what you call the front and what you call the corner front comes into play. And why we like to have that flexibility, but because the door is not presented on the front side, the front becomes along the north side of the property.
That's what I'm
Imagine, if you will, there was another door, and we can call it either way. We would call the south side to be the side yard then. And at that point, rather than being the jump from, saying, 25 feet to 3 feet, it becomes a jump from 6 feet to 3 feet. because a side yard minimum setback is 6 feet with a single-story building. Well, it doesn't matter, for any story building, it's a narrow lot, so it depends on what you want to classify as a front, so we don't have that here.
Yeah, and maybe when anybody makes a motion, you could just say north, south, east, and, in terms of setbacks or something like that, if we want to do that, because I understand what you're trying to say there, John, but I don't know if we're going to get up with your lingo here before.
That's why I want to know, the questions that you are north, east, and south. The west side is not in question on this.
Right.
Overall discussion.
So let's revisit, or let's visit the constraints that we need to evaluate in order to take action one way or the other on this. Preservation of intent, does anybody have an argument?
Yeah, I think, I'll take the first crack at the elements here.
Go for it.
I don't think that a variance is inconsistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the regulations for this district. It's a really narrow lot that, other than, I think the testimony was, other than as a public park, requires some degree of a variance to do anything with, to use it as a residential lot, which is frankly the intent for that lot. I do think that there are exceptional circumstances here. If we look at the lot, or the block in general, this is the narrowest of the lots on that block. And that reasoning goes for, frankly, all three of the requests here. I think that a variance is necessary to preserve and for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights, because as I said before, without a variance, the lot is largely unbuildable without some degree of a variance. Where I'm having a little bit of a difficulty is the absence of detriment. I think that if we perhaps wiggle that structure a little bit off of the south setback line, we can alleviate that detriment a little bit more. But on the whole, I don't think that the variance requested creates a substantial detriment to adjacent property.
Or to the neighborhood as a whole.
Right. And then the hardship for all three of these setbacks, it's not self-imposed, or I haven't heard anything that it's based solely on economic grounds.
All right, well, given those, are you willing to make a motion, or is somebody willing to make a motion?
I guess the question, I'll based on those, I will move to approve the variance. I would place a condition that the home be moved a little bit further off of that rear setback.
To 5 feet?
To 5 feet.
On the south setback?
Yes.
Can we have the person come back who's doing the building? Just to see what he thinks of that? He's sworn in.
Sure, we could. I wasn't really that worried about it, but, yeah, sure, come and sit at the table.
Well, I am.
I hear you,
I
yeah.
don't know.
So,
How do you
not
feel
making a
about
motion
that?
at this point.
no, I think,
Like I said, be clear that you're not making a motion at this point, is that correct, or?
I've made the motion. I think if it's seconded, we can still have further discussion, but I've made the
All
motion.
right, I'll second it, but I'd like to hear it.
so,
Unless you tell me
if we insist that you gotta move the house 2 feet north on the site, but you get the setback from 15 down to 13, and the other 3 to 5, you're fine with that?
That's fine. I've got
Okay.
no issue with that. I just want to build something nice and fit in the neighborhood.
Yeah, get a house back in there in that neighborhood.
Okay, thank you
Right.
for just.
Yeah, no, that's great. You're thinking of people. I
I just
don't always
always
do
do.
that.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. So Josh, that was your motion to approve this with increasing that south setback by 2 feet and decreasing the north setback by the corresponding 2 feet.
Yes.
And I second.
And you second that. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion, opposed? Motion carried. Great, thank you, sir, you've got your variance. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Move it a little bit further away, hopefully it'll make it easier when you're building next time.
Thank you.
All right. Last but not least, Appeal 27-24, consideration with possible action on a variance request from Donald Blomberg. A property owner and applicant requesting to exceed rear yard setback minimums for a single-family home at 1203 Bay Mist Drive. And before we begin, folks, can you confirm the following for this appeal by stating I confirm? I do not have a conflict of interest in this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm. I have not received any communication from any person or party about this matter.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
And I confirm. John, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
All right, tell us about it.
So, what we're looking at here is 44-554, lot dimension, bulk building requirements. For this one, though, we're looking at the rear yard. So, minimum setback, 25 feet. Very clear rear yard in this overall property. Applicant is requesting addition to the home, which will place the setback at 18 feet, which means the proposed attached deck would go 7 feet past the rear yard setback. So, look at the property here. It is a 112.74 by 80 foot property. This is an aerial view from back in 2023. Since then, the neighborhood has built up and the home has been built out here. So they built a home, and you can see this is the existing footprint of the home, driveway, and the home itself is approximately 30 feet or so from the rear property line. They are looking to put a deck on, approximately 16 feet in width and 12 feet in depth. With that, because it's attached to the home, that means it's like it's a part of the home. And so they're asking for their principal structure to go into the rear yard setback to where it's not going to be at approximately 18 feet from the rear property line in the proposed site plan. This is a image of what they like to do for the deck itself on the back of the home. This is another image of the plat that happened out over at Bay Mist. It's a relatively new plat that has occurred out that way. It is not the narrowest, shallowest lot in the neighborhood, and 118 feet it's smaller than your homes back out over in neighborhoods like this, but going back to the property we just looked at, it would still be pretty much in line with those type of homes back over on Norwood. The applicant has provided some images of the existing property, noting elevation changes that are out there. So we're seeing some shots here of the rear yard. This is here where they want to place the deck on the back of the property, and some views from neighboring properties. So if they build a deck, the way with it being attached right now, closest it can be is 5 feet. If you were to have it as an accessory structure, meaning it was off in its own, floating off in space somewhere, you could go as close as 4 feet if it was accessory structures. But this is attached to the house. So
Is
that's
there
what we're doing.
a home behind that home?
There are homes behind that home.
There are homes behind it?
Yep,
Okay.
so, and they're facing similar issues here. If you were to, I've measured out what it means for this patio here, right at 25 feet. I measured out what this one was, it's right at 25 feet. So, the lots themselves is compared to what, I'd say maybe a more, this is a contemporary home built, but usually they're a bit deeper than this. But that said, these lots easily meet the requirements as far as minimum lot size. It's well over that, so.
So do you know, are these spec homes, John, or were these customs?
I do not know.
Other questions for staff? All right, let's hear from our petitioners. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes. Thank you, first of all, for the opportunity. We moved into this house we purchased about 3 months ago. It was already built, it was already placed into the structure. They had put that inset in for the 16-foot deck. We did not realize there was going to be issues. Actually got approval on our permit, and the day the builders came out to put the deck on, the inspector said, "Oh, we got to shut this down." I didn't realize it was that close. So all our supplies are already purchased. A 5-foot deck is not functional for the backyard, and if you saw the pictures, the yard is fairly well sloped into the next property. It also drops off From the patio, there's a 3 to 4 foot drop from the patio down, and that whole area sloped, so it's really unusable without a deck there. And so even to put a 5-foot deck on there would not be real workable for functionality. Again, we did not create this problem, it was already created. We could not see this layout because we purchased it in winter, and the snow did not let us even see the layout as it was when we got here. Some of the exceptional circumstances surrounding this is, again, the steep slope of the backyard. A deck is really the only logical way to use the backyard in a functional way. The patio, again, drops 36 to 42 inches based upon the portion, but it's very unsafe. We had our grandkids up, very unsafe at this point without some type of decking out the backyard. And a 6 or 5 foot deck is not really workable. Many of our houses on the back side of us have cement slabs, but it's level coming out from their properties, and it's very easy to put a slab into that. We do not have that privilege. Our house sits on a hill, the only one in the whole area that really sits on the hillside. They, I believe, set back the house probably 6 to 7 feet because of the incline in the front yard. If they had put the house forward that 7 feet, we would have a 9 to 10 degree incline, which is fairly unnavigable in the winter months. And so by setting it back, they allowed for about a 6.5% incline, which is much more workable, not ideal. So I believe that is probably part of that intent, but we would like to put a 12 by 16 foot deck in the backyard. That's not a substantial deck, it's 192 square feet. We have decks in the community that are much larger than that. Of course, some of them have more property along with that. I think a strict compliance would really limit our usage of our backyard and the functionality in the intent of this property. Again, the hardships, of course, is with the variance, we are not able to put a deck on that is usable for us. Cost involved with looking at some other options makes it prohibitive. But I think also appearance-wise, we are in keeping with the mandates of the covenants and matching the fence line with the other fences, which is white in the community. And that would then put landscaping into the property, tying in with the deck that we are looking at proposing. And so, again, our supplies have been purchased on site because it was initially approved besides. So I'm just asking for your consideration to allow a variance to let us make use of our backyard as was intended. Thank you.
Thank you. So any questions for the petitioner who, in my humble opinion, has assembled the absolute best packet we have seen at this table,
I would say.
maybe ever. Not handwritten, specifically addressing your arguments for the case as to why this should be granted. Just really appreciate the diligence and the work that you put into this request. Thank you. Questions for the petitioners? All right, we'll deliberate and let you know in a minute. I have to say I buy their
I do
case
too.
with Iron Sinker.
I have I have a question for staff, if that's allowable. How many of the houses on this street have this problem?
As far right now, so how close their buildings are? to-
Yeah, like how many people who want to put up a deck in the backyard are going to find out that they have their problem?
I do not know. What I know is this, when looking back to other places, when looking at what was done back in 2023,
Mhm.
you're gonna see a line, and you put a ruler there, it's a straight line, it's 25 feet with those. Now, this is part of a condominium project, larger planning overall, as far as how that works. These are all single-family homes, which they have their own individual homes that are built.
Well, I was going to say,
So,
unless
yeah.
it's a spec home builder who's just
Yeah.
building them himself.
Yeah,
And he still has a responsibility for not,
right.
putting the stuff on the back of a house to allow people to put up a deck and then positioning the house in such a way that they can't.
Right, and then when it comes to where the front yard was placed, because going back to our question of, you can place a house either in the front yard, in your front yard setback, as long as the block has not been built up that 50%, you can go
Yeah.
shimmy around all you like. Eventually, when the block is built up to where it's 50%,
Yeah.
now our average has been established,
Yeah.
that's where you're placing the house.
Yeah, okay, all right. I'm being fussy because I'm a little salty about that, but,
And that wasn't their fault.
no, it's not their fault. Matter of fact, you're on a hill, you've actually got kind of a built-in excuse here, which is how I'm looking at this. Your gradient, to me, is the difference.
So you make the arguments. See?
Okay. Can I borrow your sheet?
Yes.
Because I can't seem to bring mine up. So, let's start out with the first one. Preservation of intent, variance would not, inconsistent with the spirit and purpose, and I think in this particular case, that's true. The variance is being asked for, not necessarily because the house is misplaced, but because the steepness of the driveway, both in the steepness of the property, both in the front and the back. Couldn't move the house any farther forward because of the steepness of the driveway. You move it farther back, again, you know, and the stuff in the back there is clearly on a fairly heavy slope. And again, that goes into exceptional circumstances as well. A lot of the lots in this, you said you're probably one of the few people who are actually on that's the steepest part of the hill there in this area. So that's unique to the neighborhood and unique to your particular lot. The preservation of property rights, well, I mean, you know, I wouldn't want a 5-foot deck either, and I wouldn't want my grandkids falling in the house. Besides, not that I have grandkids, but the point being is that in order to be able to enjoy those properties that you just purchased, to me, that's a preservation of property rights, and I don't think it's an unreasonable request to be able to use the backyard of the house, particularly when you can see the board that was put on the back of the house for you to attach a deck to it, which would have been completely visible when you looked at the house in the winter. The absence of detriment, I don't think there's any particular detriment here, simply because it's not going to impinge on the neighbors. This is a developing neighborhood, and I believe that it will materially make that back lot easier to maintain. It'll also help with the drainage and things like that, as well as the pieces of it. Now, hardship, I don't consider this to be self-imposed. We can't take into account that you bought the materials.
Right, right,
That's-
I
that's-
understand
yeah,
that.
That's something we can't take into account. I
Right.
wish we could, but we
No,
can't.
no, I
But in this
To
particular
that, to
case,
that point though, Stephen, I think it is unusual here that the permit was pulled before
Yeah.
all this other
I
stuff
agree.
happened.
I agree too. Yeah, I agree with that. And I also don't think that this is not self-imposed. You wouldn't have put this house in this spot if you couldn't have put a deck on it. You bought the house probably thinking, man, we got to get a deck back here. You know, I don't think any of this was self-imposed, and I don't think this is also just for resale value for the house. Those are my arguments along.
So you
along
just
my
made
lines.
a motion to that effect?
And I make a motion to approve as asked.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second based on the passing of all of our tests to approve the request as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Got your.
Got it so
Thank you.
much. Thank you very much.
So to make sure, I wasn't hostile to you guys.
No, no, no.
I'm a little salty that we're gonna see this again and again and again
Yeah.
because it's the dollars, so.
Yeah, you might.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
Thanks
so
much.
much.
Thank you. And then date of our next meeting is September 16th, 2024. Assuming we have no public hearings, as there's nothing on the agenda, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Bye.
Stop.
Thank you.
Well, this was nice.